Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing no makeup or barely there makeup type of look. And I feel like this is a super versatile look just when you want to kind of look a little bit more put together and cover up some of your blemishes. I think it can be used for a variety of occasions. I wore my makeup like this a lot last summer when I didn't really feel bothered to be wearing a whole lot of base makeup and I didn't have that much time. I also liked doing my face like this during Ramadan. I was trying not to go for any specific makeup looks and just look really natural. I've seen a lot of this trend go around online, and I feel like it's just been within the past year or two where I've been more comfortable to embrace it and wear it more frequently out in public. Otherwise, I like to look like I do have something going on. Lisa Eldridge, the makeup artist, always likes to call this microdosing, and it involves a lot of the techniques that she uses anyways in her videos. She coined the term pinpoint concealing, so it does involve some pinpoint concealing. I'm not actually going to use any foundation, so at the end it should look really light and natural, but a little bit more put together than what I'm currently at right now. Okay, so let's just get started then. And my makeup mirror is over here, so that's where I'll probably be looking for the majority of the time. I'm going to start off with color correcting. To be honest, another reason I didn't used to be comfortable micro dosing my makeup or just pinpoint concealing my makeup is that I struggle with uneven skin tone, and so it doesn't always work for me to just cover up some blemishes because I still have that uneven skin base left over. You know, just as I've matured, I've become a little bit more confident in my own skin, and I can go with a little bit less of a base. I have pretty uneven skin tone, and it's not perfect skin by any means. I've always struggled with acne and post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, but today I'm mostly just going to be counteracting a little bit of that. We'll start off with some color corrector. I'm using the Huda Beauty Faux Filter Corrector, and mine is in the shade Pink Pomelo. Oh, I forgot to mention actually that my skin is already prepped. I've already done moisturization and applied my sunscreen. It's been a while, probably an hour since I've done that. So everything has had time to kind of soak into my skin. So I'm going to apply this directly from the applicator, and I'm just applying it kind of in these tear troughs where I have the most discoloration. And I have quite a bit of discoloration on the outsides of my eye. So I'm going to apply a little tiny bit going from the kind of edge of my eye up to the tail of my eyebrow. I also have a bluish vein underneath both of my eyes, so I'm going to go over that. And with whatever is remaining on the applicator, I'm going to apply it around my mouth. I have quite a bit of discoloration around my mouth, but when you're going for a no makeup or barely there makeup look, it's hard to apply too much corrector and then conceal it without looking unnatural. Also, I have super dry skin right now. My lips are like split and cracked and everything, and especially the corners of my mouth where I also have the most discoloration. My skin is quite dry, so if I load that area up with product, it tends to look kind of crusty, so I'm going to try to avoid that one. After I've applied my color corrector, I can do two things. I can either apply my concealer over it while it's still wet and then blend that in, or I can blend this in first and then apply my concealer and let that sit and then do that. So I think I'm going to go with that second option today. It really just depends on my mood what I do. Today I think I'll just blend out my color corrector without adding any concealer in to begin with. So I'm just using this Real Techniques Deluxe Crease Brush, which I found to be pretty good for blending out concealer under the eyes, color corrector. This is usually the brush that I use for my color corrector. It's exceptionally important to have good skin prep because the state of your skin is kind of dictating how the look is going to turn out. And also, whenever you're using products, you want to have the best possible color matches. If anything is too light or too dark, because we're not applying it for over the face entirely and we're only applying it in certain areas, it can look super noticeable if you have the wrong shade. So I've done my best to find my current best matches. Okay, with the concealer color corrector at the outer edge of my eye, I tend to blend that downwards instead of upwards. And now over here, you've noticed that I have quite a large area of discoloration around my mouth. I call it the muzzle area. In order to be less detectable and look a little bit more natural, I can't go and cover every single area. just because that would look way too obvious. So I kind of just focus on the absolute darkest areas, and that's where I color correct. And then whatever is left over on my brush, then I can drag that up and add it to other areas that could be color corrected. But I do also want to just make sure to concentrate the product right where I have the most discoloration. Now we've laid down a good base for where we can put our concealer. In order to cover up blemishes, the easiest way would be to take like a maximum coverage type of concealer. With something like a liquid concealer or a cream concealer, you need to let that set down on your face in order to make it more concentrated. So I like to take a little bit on the back of my hand, apply it to a brush. And this is one of those like flat concealer brushes. Find a blemish, for example, I'll take this one, which is some leftover scarring from a pimple that I had, and just go over it. I like to attack it from like kind of all sides just to make sure that every angle of that blemish is covered up. And then I like to let it sit so that a little bit of that moisture of it or that hydrating property kind of evaporates out and it's left with a little bit more of a concentrated pigment. So we let that sit. I'll do a couple more. I have a couple of freckles that have developed over the past few years, but I'm not going to do too much to those. I'm trying to just kind of pick and choose almost the most noticeable blemishes in order to cover up, and then the rest can kind of just be there. I think I will use a little bit of this on my nose too, because there's quite a bit of redness here. And I'm also like just trying to make sure that I'm using a very, very, very small amount of product. Just to demonstrate what I would do with like a stick type of concealer or a pot type of concealer. So I'll take this little scar that I have from a previous pimple. You kind of scribble over it in all directions in like a jagged motion. You don't want to make like a perfect circle in any way. Just kind of attack it from all sides. And the difference between this really and the liquid concealers is that you just don't have to wait for this to set. I think I'll just go with the same brush that I was using before. I'm going to blend out starting from the very edges of that little area that I applied the concealer. And you just sort of gently like tap that out. You don't necessarily want to blend out the exact little speck that you had to cover. You want to keep the product over there, and then whatever's around it you can blend out. So this one is probably honestly just going to stay a little bit visible just because it's quite pigmented, and I know I won't be able to fully cover it, but I think that should be good enough. The rest of the concealer has had enough time to set, so I will do the same thing with the rest of the blemishes. Gently buff out the edges of all those little splotches I made, and I want to make sure that once I actually get close to the actual blemish, then I don't remove the concealer that I placed on top of that. You can kind of use your finger to tap a little bit out and blend as well. Another problem that I have right now is that my nose has been super flaky for the past few days. I did recently exfoliate, which helped a little bit, but still there's like certain areas that the product just doesn't want to stick to. So, you know, you just do the best you can. With the remaining concealer that's on my hand, I can go in and apply just the tiniest bit to where I would normally apply concealer. Use a little bit of that to conceal just that cut corrector that I had. That color corrector does blend in my opinion, nicely into my skin tone down here. So I don't usually have to do too much to cover it up. I tend not to bring my concealer way up to my lash line just because I have a lot of fine lines right under my eye, and I'd rather not have a bunch of concealer that's just gonna get stuck in creases anyways. And I think that is good. As you can see, my skin does not look like some type of blank canvas. There is still some redness. This is my cat Lola. If you've been watching my other videos, then you are probably familiar with Lola, but she'll be here keeping me company. As you can see, my skin is not like some blank canvas at this point. I do still have some pigmentation, unevenness, a little bit of redness on the cheeks, but like that's just part of having skin. It's dynamic. It's not always in the same state, and you know, if it was completely flawless, it wouldn't look as natural. So I don't mind those. I'm just trying to like make myself look a little bit more presentable by covering up certain blemishes, not too stressed if they're not completely covered up. Okay, that's kind of like all the coverage that I'm going to add. A couple of my other products like blush and contour, in my opinion, do detract from some of the blemishes that you already have on your face. They don't act as like coverage products. They don't technically have coverage, but it does add to the look a little bit more of an even skin tone and appropriately placed pigment. This is something optional for me. If you are the type of person that really likes to bronze and contour all the time, then I'm sure this would be a non-negotiable. But if I'm kind of headed out the door, or if I don't want to look super unnatural, then I typically skip my contour. So just for the purpose of this video, I did want to use it, and so I chose the contour that is most similar to my natural skin tone, just so that it's not too deep and not too obvious. So I will go in with the Anastasia contour stick in the color Fawn. I'm going to apply the product from the stick onto a brush and kind of tap it into the back of my hand just to make sure that the pigment is evenly distributed. Place the contour where I would normally, but I don't want to bring it in too far into the face, and I don't want to apply too much. With whatever is remaining on the back of my hand, I'm gonna really just smush that into the brush and bring that down the sides of my nose. And I'm going to use this like angled blush brush to just blend that into my skin. No crazy definition. I think it just helps also on camera because cameras tend to wash out my skin, make it a little bit less dimensional. I'm just trying to add in a little bit more dimension. I have kind of been into the blush touring type of trend, so I'm basically gonna apply a blush. I don't want anything shimmery. I want something matte or like a natural type of finish, so that it doesn't look like I obviously have some, you know, different sheen going on my face. So I will be using this Ilia multi-stick in the shade At Last. It's just this mini travel size that I've been trying forever to use up. I do find this shade to be good for me for that blush touring look, which is basically just applying your blush where you would your contour. I like to do it like in between where I would apply my blush and contour normally. And I normally would apply this to the back of my hand too, but because I don't have any base makeup that this can disrupt in this area, I feel comfortable applying it directly to the skin. So as you can see, we're applying it almost where we applied the contour. I'd say it's just a little bit higher up though. And I also like to apply like a dot to my nose. I'm going to use an e.l.f. Putty blush to blend this out. This is, sorry, the e.l.f. Putty Blush brush. And I've been using this for my liquid and cream blushes these days. I'm just going to try to keep that blush in the area that I applied it in. I don't want to bring it too far up, and I definitely don't want to bring it too far down. But I did apply it to the outside of my face, and I do kind of want to drag it in as far as it will towards the inside, and it will kind of mesh with the natural pinkishness I have on my cheeks over here. And then I will go over the nose as well. I already had a little bit of redness on my nose today, so this kind of blends it in and makes it look a little bit more intentional, I guess. Although it is still sticking to the patchiness and the dryness on my nose. Now, the next step is also optional, but if you have a long day ahead of you, or if you tend to sweat or get a little bit more oily, then I would suggest, just for the longevity of your base, to set it with something. If you watch some of my other videos, you'll know that I like to use the Bare Minerals Original Foundation as kind of a powder, especially when I'm not using too much other coverage products. So that's what I'll do today. I'm going to apply some of this into the cap, kind of swirl it in, tap off the excess, and then lightly dust this over the face. So this does a couple of things. One, it adds the slightest amount of coverage, but also because I'm going over all of those pigment products that I put, the blush and the contour is just gonna soften those a little bit more and really make them look like they're part of the skin. And I'm not using too much of this product. Again, the whole purpose of this video is to not use too much of any one product. It's all about just the subtle effect every individual product can give, and then the entire look at the end. And because this doesn't have like a glowy finish and it doesn't have a matte finish, it has a natural finish, it just kind of adds to that look of being a little bit more seamless skin. Nobody can tell really that it's not just my skin. I will use a setting powder to set my under eye, and once again, just using the smallest amount. I'm going to use today the e.l.f. Halo Glow setting powder, and this is the light pink color. Now normally I would use a powder puff to apply it to the under eye, but because I don't want it to look like there is powdered out under my eyes, I'm going to use this Real Technique setting brush to apply it. So just applying it to the brush, tapping off the excess, and looking up, making sure that I don't have any product settled into the creases, and then I'm just going to lightly dust under my eyes. And that will mattify this like teardrop area as well, which kind of brings less attention to it. Whatever is left over on my brush, I can just apply that to certain other areas that I want to set a little bit more. And honestly, that is it for the base makeup. It doesn't really look like much, but I think it's a little bit more put together than what we started out with. So now we can move on to the eyes. And before I do that, I will fill in my eyebrows. I think the most natural way to fill in your eyebrows is probably a brow pen that's very similar to the color of your natural eyebrows. You don't want anything that's too light or too dark, and we don't want anything that's too thick or waxy that you can definitely see on your eyebrows. This is a product by e.l.f. It is the e.l.f. Holy Strokes Micro Fine Brow Pen, and I have the shade Espresso. I believe this is the darkest. Now, I don't really like this product that much for filling in the eyebrows. It feels like there's no product coming out on the actual applicator. So it's not something that I like to use on a daily basis just because it doesn't add enough definition in my opinion. But for this type of look, I think this would be something perfect because it's the most natural looking brow filler that I currently own. I'll brush them up first and lay kind of the hairs down where I want them to exactly. I'm just going to find any gaps in my eyebrows where I want that to be filled, and I'll just use the brow tint pen to cover those up. So I actually won't add too much to the fronts of my eyebrows. I'll leave those natural. So I usually actually start with the tail when I'm trying to like just fill in areas that need to be filled in. And I'm kind of filling in this area. And I have a couple of gaps down here in my eyebrow that I want gone. Yeah, see this eyebrow pen, you just kind of have to keep going at it and keep going at it and keep going at it to deposit even a slight amount of color. And now you can see the difference between one eyebrow and the other. So this one just looks a little bit more filled in, but I feel like it still has that super natural look. It's not blatantly obvious that my eyebrows are just like filled in. I'll do the same, or I'll try to do the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, that took a little bit longer than I would have liked to spend on my eyebrows, but that's what this product kind of is. And that's where I'm going to call it. I suppose you could add like a clear brow gel. I don't want to make the look of my brows a little bit thicker right now. I think they're fine just how they are. So I'm not going to apply anything on my lids today, but I will use my eyelash curler because I do that every day anyways. Brows and eyelash curler, these are my non-negotiables. It doesn't matter if I'm staying in the house, but it's kind of part of my morning routine rather than a makeup routine. Pushing them upwards creates such a dramatic effect, I would say. So non-negotiable for me. I do like to add a little bit of definition to my lash line, and the way that I do that is by tight lining. So if I had lighter hair, then I would probably use a brown liner. I have, pretty much black hair anyways, so I feel like I can get away with black. But today I think I'll use brown just for a softer look. So what I'll do is take the back of any makeup brush, use that to push up my upper eyelid and expose that little area underneath. And then I will use a brown pencil or gel liner. And you want to just make sure that you're getting up close to the actual lash line, kind of pushing that product into the lash line as well. And that's just like a very subtle difference. And if I had used black, then this would be a little bit more dramatic. But for today's purpose, I think brown will do just fine. I like applying mascara just because I don't have very long, super voluminous lashes to begin with. But if I did, then I probably would skip out. I do try to use like a natural looking mascara, something that's not like super spidery or clumpy. This one from e.l.f., this is the tubing one, it's called the Lash Extender Mascara. This will probably do just fine for today. If I still had it, I would prefer the e.l.f. Lash and Roll, but I'm not currently using that one. And I don't have one open, so I'm not going to open it for now. If you got any smudges on your skin, you do want to remove those. I'll remove mine in a little bit. I didn't get too much on, but sometimes what I like to do is add a little bit of brightening or nude eyeliner on the bottom waterline. Now I'll add just a bit of a bright effect. That made my eyes look a little bit more open. So for lips, you want to use something that is very similar to the tone of the margin of your lips, whether that be a lip liner or some type of contour. I'm going to use a lip liner today. I will use the ColourPop Lippy Pencil in the shade BFF2, and another option I could use would be the LA Girl Shockwave Nude Lip Liner in the shade Gingerbread. So just to do a couple of quick swatches, this is Gingerbread, and I feel like that's a little bit too deep for what I'm going for right now. And this is BFF2, which is coming out quite similar, I feel like, on camera. It's a little bit pinkier. I think this is the one that I'm going to use today. Line certain portions of my lips, so just the top center and the bottom center. And then I will use my finger really just to blend that line into the lips and make it look a little bit more subtle. The last step would be to go over it with your favorite lip balm or lip oil. I'm going to use the Ulta Beauty Juice Infused Lip Oil. It adds like a super glassy shine. If you want something a little bit more subtle, you could honestly even just use like Vaseline or something. And this is clear, but you could also use something that is very similar to your natural lip color. Okay, and that's a really pretty finish for me. And to be honest, that's the end of the makeup look. I wouldn't even really call it a makeup look. It's just kind of the look that I'm going for today. If you guys found this helpful in any way, if you learned any new tips or tricks, then be sure to let me know in the comments. If you have any questions or comments or any other concerns, then drop that down below as well. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps my channel out a lot, and it motivates me to make more videos. So hopefully I'll see you in the future. But thank you so much for watching. Bye.